What's going on, guys? This is the Red Rogue, and today I'll be giving you a first look / rough sorta overview on the legendary crafting system coming with Shadowlands. This process is still in revision, so there is a chance some of these steps will change to some degree, but if there are any changes, I have a feeling they will be minimal at best. So let's see exactly how we can get our hands on some of those items of orangey goodness. So, Legendaries, those amazing, all-powerful items that most players strive to attain. Other than Legion, which was by far the most punishingly RNG expansion to include Legendaries, Legendaries were often the result of a long, arduous process that could take an entire patch of an expansion to earn, and often played some role in the story, or at the very least had their own quest chains. Shadowlands seeks to change that. This time around, the quest chain involving Legendaries is of a much more broad scale and surprisingly isn't a major focus of the expansion in terms of story development. At least not yet, but I guess that could potentially change. Anyways, we'll start this little breakdown of the process from this brief storyline, and then break down the actual process of making our Legendaries. So yeah, kinda spoilers and you've been warned. So, to begin the legendary infusing / crafting process, however you want to call it, you'll need to complete the leveling process / complete the stories in Bastion, Maldraxxus, Ardenweald, and Revendreth. After doing this and choosing your Covenant, you'll then return to whatever chunklet of the Shadowlands that your Covenant resides in. Each one will have a slightly different welcoming ceremony process thing, from a simple 3 cheers hip hip hooray type deal from the Necrolords, to having to put on a literal theatrical play for the Night Fae before they'll officially welcome you into their ranks. You'll then be slapped upside the head with literally every endgame system basically all at once, such as Renown, Covenant Callings, Soulbinds, Conduits, and even more stuff that I'll have to cover in other videos. For now, we'll be focusing on Legendaries. Okay. So one of the members of your Covenant will give you a quest to free some souls from the Maw, which is the giant evil place that Torghast is in. Getting there is quite simple once you realize how. There's a literal giant death hole in the middle of Oribos that you jump into, obviously. And then you're there. That's it. Once in the Maw, you'll do a relatively short quest chain, which will eventually introduce you to a broker by the name of Venari. Without spoiling too much of the story, Venari is your ticket into entering Torghast, the Tower of the Damned, aka the place where you're likely to find all your besties being tortured for all eternity and stuff. Fun times. So you will then be introduced to Torghast through a series of short dungeon crawler runs. Upon completing enough of these, you will gain access to the Rune Carver's chambers within Torghast. Again, there will be a little bit of questing involved, but it isn't much. Okay, so we're finally here with the big scary looking Rune Carver guy who's gonna make our awesome gear. But how? Well, the Rune Carver and I are probably loosely related, as his memory is apparently as bad as mine. Therefore, you will need to find the memories of the Rune Carver, with each specific memory being related to the legendary power he can imbue onto specifically crafted gear. The sources for these memories vary based on the memory you want, and this can be from a variety of content, such as reputation unlocks, raid bosses, dungeon bosses, PvP vendors, and more. The lists on Wowhead, for example, are moderately complete and are being updated as people find them. I'll leave a link to the page I'm talking about in the description if you're interested in checking that out. So let's say we already have a memory for the Rune Carver. We'll bring it back to him and unlock the power to imbue onto our gear. So now we need a special piece of gear to put this power on. This is where our crafting professions will come into play. Currently on beta, if you have one of the gear crafting professions, you simply talk to the Rune Carver to learn all of the patterns, but this may change in the future. The items to be imbued with legendary powers are crafted from leatherworking, tailoring, blacksmithing, and jewel crafting. However, some of the more important items needed for these crafting professions will come from enchanting and inscription. As a quick example, leatherworkers will need their heavy desolate hide, a rare skinning drop, enchanted to become, surprise, enchanted heavy desolate hide, if they want to make either a leather or mail armor legendary. Similar systems are in place for blacksmithing, tailoring, and jewel crafting, which I'll elaborate on a bit more as we get closer to the launch date. From inscription, you will need missives. Missives are basically items that let you choose what secondary stat you want on your crafted gear, and this same rule applies to the legendaries you'll be able to forge as well. You'll have 2 missives, so you'll have both stats that you can choose at your leisure. It's unlikely that missives will be terribly expensive, other than right at launch, just because people will be trying to make as much profit off of them as early as they can, and I do kind of expect the prices to drop quickly as the resources needed to make missives are not very extensive as of now. However, these are something that will be in regular demand as people craft their legendaries over the course of the entire expansion, so maybe they will hold their value better than I anticipate. Next, once you've either crafted the armor piece of your choice or bought it from a crafter, which I'm sure will be pretty expensive early on, you'll need Soul Ash. This stuff is earned from running Torghast, Tower of the Damned. This in itself is a pretty lengthy, convoluted, and still incomplete topic, but essentially you earn this stuff from clearing floors in Torghast, and there is a noticeable diminishing return effect on it, so you won't feel the need to just binge on Torghast for 10 hours straight to get all your legendaries immediately or anything like that, which is something I'm personally thankful for. I'd really hate to have another grind that keeps me from playing around on alts, as I've gotten more interested in having at least one character of each covenant the more I've played on the beta. Mainly just so I can see all the different quests and stories unfold, but also because having alt is going to be very useful with the number of professions that are working in cohesion to craft these legendaries, which I feel is a very good change, and will help bring the armor crafting professions back into the realm of being useful / powerful again. And making money, because who doesn't like making money? So yes, we now have our item, we have our Soul Ash, we already brought back the Rune Carver's memory. Now we can craft a legendary, finally. Depending on which power you have earned, you'll really want to have looked and see what armor piece that legendary power is meant to go on. Each power should have 2 options for slots of gear it can be put on, so you'll definitely want to ensure that you bought the right one / crafted the right one, or else you'll have wasted a lot of materials, time, or money, or potentially all 3. You'll return to the Rune Carver and speak to him, requesting to create a legendary. From here, you will choose the armor piece you want to use. Then, you will select from your list of available powers that match the armor type. Lastly, you'll need some of those stat missives from Inscription to choose the stats on your piece of gear. You'll spend your Soul Ash on crafting, and voila! A nice sparkly orange piece of gear for your toolkit. They have also introduced an upgrading / rank system with these craftable pieces of armor, however currently it involves repeatedly crafting the same item several times to get the higher item level version unlocked, as well as larger amounts of Soul Ash for higher ranks, which has so far been a bit of a prohibitively steep grind to fully test. This is another point that will have to be discussed at a future time, unfortunately. Also, you can only wear one legendary at a time as of now. However, I have a strong hunch they will add the ability to wear a second one later on in the expansion, to help give that feeling of crazy exponential power that always manages to get out of hand by the end of the expansion. So yeah, this is a lot to cover, but I hope I explained enough to give you folks a pretty good idea of the steps. I plan on explaining a bit more of the crafting process in further depth, since I am going to hopefully be showing you all some of the really good farming spots for leather, cloth, and hopefully ore as well if I can manage to find them. If you have any questions about this video or any of the topics in it, don't hesitate to ask. I do my best to answer back any comments as promptly as I can. If you're new here, maybe consider subscribing to the channel and checking out some of my other stuff. I do new uploads every weekday and cover a variety of content, with a bit of a bias towards rogue-related things. I also wanted to give a shout out and a huge thank you to my 3rd member of the Super Shiba Squad tier of my Patreon, Sun29er. Thank you so much for your generosity, and as I mentioned before, as a member of the Super Shiba Squad tier level, your chosen username will be in the credits of all future videos on the channel. Thank you all so much for watching. This is the Red Rogue, and I'll see you guys around.